What made you go, wow, this person is an absolute psycho? I found out my ex cheated on me again and he threatened to kill himself. He staged a whole scene with a knife and bottle of pills and shut himself in a room. When I finally got in there, he told me to call 911, and when they picked up, he suddenly told me to hang up. When I asked why, he completely shut the whole thing off and went completely straight-faced and calm and told me he was just trying to manipulate me. Dude from an old place I used to work at told me stories about how he was bullied growing up, so he resorted to following people home out of passive-aggressive insecurities. While I'm empathetic towards his experience growing up, his actions in his adult years have been borderline criminal to stalking levels. He was also a huge kiss-ass that stabbed you in the back once he got chummy with upper management. He didn't last long. This dude lives in a house with his wife, and the nanny and the kids and the in-laws when they come stay down the hill in another house. There's a big in-ground pool separating the two houses. The children aren't allowed in their house, and they barely see the kids, just come down for an hour around bedtime and not even every night. The oldest kid was 7. Worked for a staging company that built truss grids for concerts. About 500 steel pins of the wrong size got sent to us. These things were about £1 each with a pointed tip. One of the techs filled a big gulp cup with them and kept it in the center console of his car to throw them at other vehicles if they pissed him off. At highway speeds they easily could have been lethal. My ex's mom signed herself up to porn sites and then told people I hacked her. I failed IT in school and only vaguely know what a VPN is. There's no way I'm hacking anyone, but the fact that she was willing to ruin her own email to make me look bad is pretty psycho tbh. My ex-BF bit his own arm till he was bleeding mid-argument talking about, "You made me do this." "No sir, I was just trying to get my point across, then you decided to do that." Skull. She had been dressing like me and styling, coloring her hair to be like mine for months. The final straw, the moment I realized she wasn't okay, was when she pulled me aside to tell me that she doesn't like my other friends calling me their friend, and I quote, "because you're mine." Nope. After the friendship ended, she took to cyberbullying me and started dressing like her new friend. Big yikes. When she started sending me pictures of her new boyfriend, half naked. Then showed up at my work to tell me how he felt about me based on what she told him. I'm so glad I ran far and fast from that one. Friend's sister was having an affair with a married guy. When she found out he wasn't going to leave his wife for her, she got drunk, drove to his house where his wife was, beeped her car horn for ages until he and wife came out, and started trying to fight his wife, not him, his wife. His wife being in her 60s and she being 30 BTW. Had an inkling she wasn't a great person, but finding out about the affair and this was a big "yeah, you're right, something ain't right" moment. Told my bestie I was getting a matching memorial tattoo with my sibling in order to remember my brother who was killed by a drunk driver. She was offended I wasn't getting my first tattoo with her and tried to pitch matching bestie tats next. Said she couldn't believe I didn't think our bond was as special as the one I had with my dead sibling, and it made her feel insecure. I lost about 160 pounds that month. Good riddance. When anyone on my in-law side thinks that my brother-in-law, who is a child rapist, should be around children or women and defends him when I speak out, I would just say my brother-in-law, but I have too many reasons to list why he is a psycho. When my mom said the KKK were onto something. Phil told his daughter 3 Christmases ago he hasn't talked to her in 2 years because she didn't say hi one time she went to visit, and that he holds grudges because that's just how he is. Yeah, total narcissistic fuck job ever. When my next-door neighbor, after a day of literally shrieking and howling and breaking things in her apartment, opened her back door and yeeted her pet duck into the yard. She then spent the next solid hour chasing, shrieking and howling at it. Poor duck. When I taught 6th grade, during the first week a kid broke one of my coffee mugs, cut their hands, and then proceeded to wipe blood all over my classroom. Perhaps the scariest part was the other kids in the class seemed unfazed as I escorted them out of the room while admin tried to stop him. He's about 18 now, and I hope he's okay and got help. Tom Cruise's 91 2-minute interview about Scientology. He's in a dark turtleneck for reference. He sounds loco and laughs like a madman. A previous boss who would call people back to office in the evening while they were halfway home because he wanted to bounce off some ideas. I was at a party in college where some of us were standing in a front yard playing some games, drinking, etc. It's a college town, so there's a lot of foot traffic, and along comes this guy our age who stops in for a seemingly pretty normal chat. Then he sees a toad. Mid-sentence, he pauses and says, "Dude, a toad." He picks this thing up, bites it in half. In half. Screams fuck shit up, and then casually saunters away at a normal pace, leaving all of us staring at each other in confused horror. Never saw that guy again. My older sister stabbing me with a fork and then biting me until I was bleeding. We were 22 and 26 at the time, smiley face. My coworker had a son that unfortunately died by suicide. I have a legitimately crazy other coworker that told me a few days later, "You know what would be funny? It would be funny if we somehow hung some shoes up in the bathroom and make it look like someone hanged themselves. That would be hilarious." This is just one story. I have so many. I legitimately would not be surprised if he was a modern-day Gacy with murdered children in his basement. I'm not kidding in the slightest. Walking through a university hallway and heard a guy say to his friend, "Yeah, but I sent them bicarb soda in through the post, so they'll think it's anthrax." I work in surgery, and I watched one of the orthos shove his dripping wet hands into his surgical gloves without drying them. You could see the wetness through the glove before he put the second pair on. Absolute madman, not to be messed with. A neighbor F57 cussed me out because I thought it was absurd to bang on my door at 3:30 am. To borrow my kill a spider. Then called police because I was not sharing. An ex-friend of mine was giddy about getting an older woman who worked with her at the grocery store fired because the older woman was running 5 minutes late to work. The woman had been working there for 30 years and was a community favorite. My ex-friend was celebrating, telling HR all about her being late, even though everyone knew she was battling an illness. That ex-friend now works in a cushy corporate job that was handed to her as a graduation gift from her uncle, while that older woman basically had to start over, pensive face. A work colleague who I'd hung out with occasionally doing wholesome stuff, went to a house dressed up as some kind of utilities worker and forced his way inside. He tied up the woman, took out a small toolkit and threatened to torture her if she didn't give him all the money and cocaine. She did. He then fled on his sailboat. We found out about all this a year later when he sailed back to California and was arrested. This went from "Ken didn't come to work today" to "Holy shit, did you hear about Ken?" When my parents got a divorce and moved to another state, they both said they couldn't take care of me and I would have to live on my own. I was 17 and had just left the hospital after a suicide attempt. They stuck me with the hospital bill. I've taken too much ayahuasca to have ego problems, it was explained in response to an intervention relating to abuse and manipulation allegations. When my schizo ex would absolutely lose it at me because he thought I was making faces at him in the mirror. He would also put my phone in the microwave because he believed my parents or the cops were listening to us. He also believed the television was sending him these messages, hence we rarely watched it. Don't ask me why I stayed. The head brewer at my old job casually telling me about the affair he had while we were canning. They wrote me a love letter in which they talked about how they wanted to lick my salvia off of a chocolate milk bottle I had drank from. They also said they constantly hurt themselves while thinking of me in said note. It was very scary for 15 years old me. I still have the note. I kept it just in case I needed to get police involved. Ripped out gorgeous oak flooring to replace in with beige tile that always looks dirty. In the living room. Who does that? I am Indian. I had a friend in 9th grade who was absolutely convinced that she was a French princess who was also a wizard. She would tell me so many stories about how they had to escape persecution, how she had to have surgery to replace her blonde hair and blue eyes with black and brown respectively. I genuinely just assumed that she was insanely traumatized and was using delusions of grandeur to cope with it, so I never said anything but God. Created a whole Twitter account to harass me but blocked me from seeing his messages. When she tried to hit me with a wooden cutting board in the kitchen because she was mad about something stupid. They stabbed me over a napkin dispute. Got reamed by a manager in a meeting with others present. It was a bit unfair and certainly uncomfortable for the others, and just downright embarrassing for me. He went OTT. Straight after the meeting, I am in kitchen filling up my water bottle and he walks in, greets me and starts talking to me like what just happened didn't happen. Zero awareness of how I might feel around him. When he threatened to kill himself if I didn't text him more often. When my sister slammed on the brakes to the car and started pummeling my body on the way to the emergency department. I just had major abdominal surgery and was going back to the ED for pain, not responding to medication. Was at a staff party when the boss's wife sat down next to me and whispered, "My husband is a psychopath, like me. When we feel like someone isn't on board with us anymore, they're dead to us." Then sat there silently and stared at me. I found a new job. Spelling edit. They didn't like Mr. Rogers, like they actively disliked him. I had a co-worker who always seemed shady and liked to steal my ideas. One day, we had to introduce ourselves on a conference call. He had to go first. He gave his name and a few things about himself, and everything that he said afterward were not true about himself, but about me, as he looked into the camera with the characteristic large pupils, not blinking, psychopathic gaze. I knew a girl who had HPV or some sort of STD, and she'd fuck guys and not tell them she had it, no condom, and then would put the blame on the guy for not checking with her. It's their responsibility to ask if they need to wear a condom. I had a friend in college who, after I confided in her that I had been raped at the party we had gone to the previous evening, decided to tell my long-distance boyfriend, who she didn't know and had never met, that I had cheated on him. After that, she went on a long campaign to get everyone on campus to stop being my friend and just get me completely isolated. By the end of her campaign, I had only one friend left. That's some true psycho shit. When people talk about how women deserve violence because of how they dress, they obviously shouldn't be in public or around kids if they get violent over clothing. My ex-wife threatened to divorce me on Christmas Eve because I told my mom my ex and I were driving separately to the family party. A few hours later, my ex is at the party talking to my family about us having kids. Watching my sibling jump around on a park bench demonstrating ninja moves and telling me he took one self-defense class and ended up telling the teacher all the things that were wrong with his technique. I thought, holy shit, I bet that teacher hopes you never come back again. Eyes whirling around, other people at the park staring while karate chops and turn moves are happening. You pivot like this. I was dumbfounded. I couldn't get back in the car fast enough. My ex admitted to me she literally does not feel empathy towards people at all. Which explained a lot. My brother thinks he was taken by reptilians when he was a kid, and now he can see who is real and who isn't. And he's a reincarnation of Jah Rastafari. He thinks when the family visited Jamaica when we were kids, a high priestess was waiting at the dock for his Royal Caribbean ship to arrive. He's a white guy from New England but now speaks types as if he is from Jamaica. It's not just the Rachel Dolezal levels of cultural appropriation at this point. The delusions are often rather terrifying violent. I've gone no contact for my safety and sanity. I work with youth. Usually if there is some kind of altercation, everyone is full of adrenaline. This one girl planned an attack on another student for when there would be basically no adults around. Pulled it off. Very violent beating. Then afterwards, she was completely calm. The premeditation plus calmness was just shocking to experience. First time I'd say in years of working with corrections involved youth, mental health, and in schools generally, I'd say I encountered an absolute psycho. Sociopath for sure. I was at the viewing of my Sil's mother. There weren't a lot of people, mostly standing and talking, so I sat in the front row for the legroom. Sil's sister comes over. This is the first time I'd met her, and sits on my lap, puts her arm around my shoulders and starts talking to me. She's married, I'm married, it's the viewing for her mother. Her mother's body is right there in an open casket. A Smith Wesson .44 long barrel to my head and fired 6 shots to prove he's the man in charge. Threw a chair over my head. Or I ducked. My friend started dating a guy that people said was a crazy dude. He showed up to my dinner party uninvited. I had invited my friend and she was sick and couldn't come, so he said he was taking his girlfriend's place since he overheard about it. He then proceeded to get blackout drunk and he kept trying to forcefully kiss everyone. When he started trying to attack my cat, I had 2 of my guy friends escort him out. He stood outside my front door banging and screaming for 20 minutes. My friend did not dump him when I called and told her.